I want to take this opportunity today to correct the record and respond to comments made during last week's private renters debate by my fellow member for North Antrim. During that debate, Mr Gaston claimed that so-called uncontrolled immigration is driving up rents, particularly in deprived areas like certain parts of North Antrim. That claim is completely false, and it is vital that this chamber does not allow misinformation to go unchallenged. So let me put the facts on record, because the most recent census data is clear. 86% of all housing in Northern Ireland is occupied by people born here. In North Antrim, that figure actually rises to 88%. In the private rented sector, 72% of tenants across Northern Ireland were born here, rising to 73% in North Antrim. In social housing, 88% of tenants across Northern Ireland were born here, rising to 89% in North Antrim. In owner-occupied housing, the picture is the same, 89% across Northern Ireland, rising to 91% in North Antrim. If immigration was truly driving up rents, we would expect to see a much higher proportion of private renters being migrants, or clear links between migration hotspots and rising rents, and that is simply not the case across the entirety of the province. The latest official data shows that net migration represents just 0.3% of our 1.9 million population, a tiny fraction. To describe that as uncontrolled is wildly misleading. To suggest that a small number of people could cause a housing crisis is simply not credible. The answer to what is driving up rents is no mystery. It's a chronic shortage of social housing, rising construction costs, delays in planning process, water infrastructure that simply cannot support new development, and of course the growing Airbnb effect, where properties that could house families are being instead turned into short-term lets, something we see right across North Antrim. That is the real housing crisis. Mr Gaston also conveniently ignored the positive contribution that people from other countries make to our society, particularly in North Antrim. 900 migrants work in health and care roles, filling essential vacancies that keep services running. Over 180 migrants in North Antrim work in education, helping to teach our children. Migrants play a vital role in agriculture, hospitality and local businesses, keeping North Antrim's economy afloat, and I thank them for that. The live reality is that racist incidents in Northern Ireland now regularly exceed sectarian incidents. In 2023 alone, there were over 1,300 racist incidents compared to 1,091. That is the power of misinformation, demonisation and the othering of our fellow human beings. Blaming immigration for a housing crisis is not just wrong, it's dangerous scapegoating, and it's a deliberate distraction from the real work that this Assembly should be doing. Mr Speaker, the truth is straightforward. Our housing crisis won't be solved by blaming migrants. It will be solved by better decisions, better investment and better government. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. I call on Timothy Gasson.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Members, when discussing unaffordable rents and the lack of available housing throughout Northern Ireland, we must also consider the causes rather than simply focusing on dealing with the outworkings of it. I believe the main issue driving up rents is the lack of available housing stock and the lack of new affordable homes being built to match current demand, never mind the future demand. A number of weeks ago, I welcomed the Communities Minister's ambition to deliver at least 100,000 new social or affordable homes over a 15-year period to meet our housing demands. On top of the potential capital funding and planning permission issues he will encounter, I do also question what commitment, if any, the Minister has been given by the Executive and the Department of Infrastructure Minister regarding investment required for Northern Ireland Water to support this much-needed housing plan. Members won't need me to tell them that right across the province there are horror stories of how decades of underinvestment in the wastewater infrastructure has left many homeowners with the consequences to live with. There is another issue which is arising, and this, while not mentioned in the motion or amendments, is relevant to the matter before the House, and that is the rapid increase in either legal or illegal HMOs. Landlords know that if they evict a good-sitting tenant today, they could then fill the house with a number of people tomorrow and increase their income as a result. A landlord in my own constituency is now buying commercial properties in the town centre with a view to turning them into HMOs due to getting a better return from an HMO than a shop. I also want to touch briefly upon one other point which is not addressed directly in the motion. Whether this chamber wants to admit it or not, uncontrolled immigration is also a contributing factor, adding to housing rents, especially in deprived areas. Last summer we witnessed some disgraceful disorder on our streets. There were attempts by some, particularly in the media, to claim that allegations of pressure caused by immigration on housing was a myth. The data, however, tells us a different story. The Northern Ireland Stats and Research Agency tells me that there was a net international flow of over 5,000 people in a year into this country ending mid-2022. The lived experience of many of my constituents in North Antrim is that many working class communities, such as Harryville in my own town, recognise that immigration has been a factor in the pressures on housing which creates higher rents. The court ruling last year on the Rwanda bill showed that the protocol opens up the very real prospect of effective immigration controls in the rest of the UK not applying in Northern Ireland. That may not be a matter which concerns the majority in this House, but as Sinn Féin have found in the Irish Republic, eventually the open borders policy of the EU gets unpopular with communities well beyond the confines of the Loyalist Housing Estates of Ballymena, which I am proud to represent, and make no apology for articulating the views here today, even if no one else will. Happy to give way to the member.
For giving way, and I would just caution that language like that is extremely dangerous. Would he not agree that actually one of the biggest issues in his area is short-term Airbnbs, as opposed to a small number of people who are coming here, and people who are asylum seekers and refugees come in a separate contract to what is paid for through the housing executive?
And the member has an extra minute, and I will remind the member to keep his comments and on the direction of the motion that's before us.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. And just responding to the member, immigration is one of the issues which is adding pressure to our housing stock right across Northern Ireland, whether the member wants to admit it or not. If you have a lack of stock, you will ultimately increase the rents. That's a fact. Immigration is part of that issue, adding to the pressures in our housing stock. That is a fact. Deputy Speaker, unless and until we deal with the factors causing the rent increases, then landlords will continue to be driven by money rather than providing good houses for their tenants. I am happy to support this motion before us, but a greater focus needs to be put on the cause of what is driving the rents up, and not just mollycoddling the landlords to keep the prices down. We need to look at the cause as well as the outworkings of it.
Thank you, Mr.